Borstein,
Yes, ma'am.
Gaffney,
Present.
Kelly,
Here.
Meggs,
Here.
Zilla.
Here.
Thank you.
Will you all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States
of America,
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Any changes or movement to the agenda? Yes, is that a nod, Steve, or?
I do recommend, we have a guest for item number 13, so I suggest the board keeps picking that up earlier, but that's just a suggestion.
Yeah, sure. Why don't we move that right after open time so that Jeff can go about his day? Anything else? Oh.
I move we.
Second.
Okay, Julia, roll call vote, please.
I'm sorry, who was the move in the second?
Tom and Michael, I believe.
Roll call vote. Borstein,
Yes.
Gaffney,
Yes.
Kelly,
yes.
Meggs,
Yes.
Zilla.
Yes,
Unanimous vote. Thank you.
thank you. Okay, so item number 3, open time for public to raise items not on the agenda or for future agenda. Do we have any public here that wish to speak? Seeing none, then we'll move on to our agenda item number 13. Consideration of authorizing the general manager upon review and approval of council to approve task order number 2 with West Yost in the total amount of $299,800 for flow monitoring and system capacity hydraulic evaluation. Steve, do you want to introduce this?
Yes, thank you, President Silla. And as I mentioned, we have a guest, Jeff Pells from West Yost. We would thank him for taking some time to answer questions about the proposal. I'll give a very brief overview. Last month, we did have a flow monitoring study in this year's budget as a follow-on to the update of the infrastructure asset management plan and a review of the projects required by the cease and desist order from back in 2013. There are 3 remaining capacity related projects that were not constructed, and the Regional Water Board agreed that we could study the system to determine if those projects indeed need to be constructed in lieu of constructing them as a condition of compliance. And so this study is an outgrowth of that discussion with the Water Board, but it's also timely because there was an original flow monitoring and hydraulic evaluation completed in 2006, which was updated in a similar scope in detail in 2014. That was 8 years between the studies. As you know, much has been done since 2014 in terms of 3 things: capital projects, in-house pipe repairs, and 3, the Lateral program, all of which will affect the amount of flow encountered during wet weather. So here we are going into 2022, which is another 8 years after the 2014 study. So we have 06, 2014, and then there's a logical reason to look at flow monitoring in 2022 to create a trend line that shows the effects of the district's investments to reduce infiltration inflow of stormwater. And so, and also West Yost performed the 2014 study. So they know, they helped with the IAMP in the hydraulic evaluation and some flow monitoring that was done with the same sub-consultant, VNA Consulting. So there will be efficiencies in working with West Yost. And so I invited Jeff here to answer any questions about the scope. We also will be able to, for a small amount of the overall budget, evaluate if San Geronimo Valley connection were contemplated by the Marin County, we would be able to estimate the scope of changes to our collection system that would be necessary to accommodate that additional wastewater if it were considered. And having this model enables us to plan for that and have answers to questions about possible costs. So with that, I don't know if there's any other aspects of the study, Jeff, that you'd like to point out, and continuing our partnership between the district and West Yost.
Nothing in particular, other than I guess I'd reinforce the timing does seem good. Lots of the rainfall patterns have changed some, and the sewer generation patterns have changed some across the state, probably across the country. Less wastewater per person, and we're seeing in all of our master planning and updates pretty significant changes in the sanitary flows. So you'll get to refresh your modeling calibration through this study and reflect kind of the reality that we're in today. And given that there'll be some good wet weather storms, we'll get a good updated calibration of the wet weather conditions as well.
Jeff, we asked you yesterday about using the smart meters, and briefly you mentioned that they're not as accurate as what this is going to provide. That's correct?
Right, they're a great tool for observing when water's rising in the manholes, which you don't want, generally speaking, and if you're running a sewer system. And so they're a good warning device. They're a good measurement of how high the water gets in any particular storm. They're less good as a tool for measuring flow. There's a rough calculation that can be done based on those levels, but that doesn't give you the accuracy that you need to actually to calibrate a model reliably using smart covers. But they're a great cost-effective tool just for monitoring your system and managing it over time between more detailed studies.
I see that Pam had a question. Pam, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah. Jeff, are you part of West Yost?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm looking at the report that you gave us. I think it's page 2. You're talking about West Marin. Is there a time frame on this, or because I don't see anything about any potential projected time frame? And then I had a question about the 1,700 properties. Are these septic properties? Are these, what does that mean? I didn't quite get that. Is that
So the
your building of new properties?
So I'm happy for Steve to assist, but what's happening there is the area in question, the Woodacre, San Geronimo, Forest Knolls, and the Lagunitas areas are not currently served by the district. I believe they're on septic now, and one option for those communities would be to connect to the district, and that's under consideration by, I guess, the county. Steve, is that accurate?
There's stakeholders in Woodacre and San Geronimo that we're working on a local treatment plant, next door to the water treatment plant.
And so, they're existing properties that are on septic now, and are considering this, or it sounds like they may ask the district, and this would prepare the district to would put information in the hands of the district to answer the question, what would it take if we were to connect, or if you were to allow them to connect, what would the impacts be on the district system?
I just want to give folks a heads up. This is a hot political potato that I'm getting contacted about. And I think maybe Steve and you and I can talk offline, but I think on any planning, we need to tread lightly, if you can. And just wanted to give you that information. Thank you.
I appreciate it, Director Banks. There's no question that going from septic to sewer is always very controversial, no matter where in this state or other states. It's interesting that, you know, Sanitary District number 1 was among the first districts ever to go septic to sewer because it was the first sewer agency in California. But you know, when I was on the state board, there are a lot of communities that reached the limits of the carrying capacity for septic systems, and they have pollution problems. You know, and Yucca Valley is one example. Up in Trinity County, there's Lewiston, and so and then Pescadero on the coast down in San Mateo County. So it's very challenging, but these septic to sewer projects do occur, and they're under consideration by stakeholders in San Geronimo Valley. They just had questions for us. So given that we're doing a modeling update, we could run a scenario so we would know, we would have answers to questions as they consider the most cost-effective way of reducing pollution of the Lagunitas Creek watershed due to their septic systems.
And how much is that going to cost us to do that?
Yeah, we talked about that a little in the Finance Committee, Jeff. Do you have an idea?
Yeah, it's basically running a scenario and that using a tool that you're developing, whether or not this particular question needs to be answered. So it's really a small adder to the process of doing the capacity analysis, and it's a little hard to tease out. We don't have a specific line for this work, but it's on the order of 10 to 20,000 in that range, probably as a guesstimate. And we could certainly estimate it more accurately if that's needed, if we wanted to pull it out for some reason.
Part of the uncertainty there is how much technical work we do on accurately modeling flows from the valley, you know, based on where, you know, the properties are in the valley. You could go down that path of specificity, or you could just do a simple assumption, you know, just put a point source right there in Fairfax and say, okay, boom, there's 1,700 properties are going in. And so if we keep it simple like that, we can do the model run for a lot less money. And I think that's where we're going to take this. You know, we're going to make it a simplified analysis, which gives us a little more worst case. You know, so it'll show that the pipes need to be a little bit bigger, maybe than they need to. But this is all just for planning purposes, because the stakeholders will benefit from knowing, okay, if we tie into Ross Valley system, it's X number of dollars minimum, whereas we could build a treatment plant up at Woodacre, and then this gives them a ability to compare costs and get the lowest cost alternative for the benefit of the citizens of the San Geronimo Valley.
All I can say is there's a lot of politics there underground that a lot of people don't know about. And I think, like I said, we need to be careful on how we plan this or support it, because when you say stakeholders, there's more than one side there. And I'm concerned that we could run into some ugly PR. So that's all I'm going to say for now. I'll add in later.
Yeah, and I hear you. I also heard from the board in March when I brought this up, when I told you I was approached, that generally I got the direction that I should keep speaking with them.
We should talk later.
All right,
Well,
I see everybody else has questions, so I'm going to move on to Tom, who came off mute first, and then Doug, and then Michael. So Tom, go ahead, please.
Well, another important consideration on this study is that we need a wet winter. And so if we don't have a wet winter, it has to be postponed. And if we postpone it, there will be some additional costs.
Right. And Pam, I made the same point of let's be careful. We're not spending money on behalf of a project that, we're not even sure is going to be requisitioned, which is a little bit different from what you're saying. But and the finance committee, I was assured that if, for some reason they said, forget it, this isn't going to be something that's part of the initial planning or require, ground level work on the project. It's kind of an add-on. If we were to do this, I would want to feel like we were going to get reimbursed from the San Geronimo future ratepayers for the consideration of the work too. Okay, thank you, Tom. Now I'll go to Doug and then Michael.
So I'd like to stay on this topic just a little bit longer. First off, Jeff, I would like you to kind of break out the costs for San Geronimo so that at some point we could seek for reimbursement. I don't mind doing this study, but Steve, I think at some point we'd want to see an agenda item on the whole San Geronimo project so that we could estimate the cost of actually putting all the sewers. And Jeff, you're talking about flow and can we take the flow? That's fine. What's the cost of putting pipes in all over that place and bringing them into the Ross Valley Sanitary District pipes? And I think the county would have to pay for that study. And by the way, if we're doing that, it would be good for the environment, but there's two things. One, if we're doing that, then we definitely have to get ready for that area to be purple piped as well. So as long as we're putting in pipes, that we'd have to put in recycled pipes as well. In my opinion, it would be reckless not to. But also, secondly, Jeff, there's no building out in San Geronimo. Why? Because they have septics. If they had sewer, then there could be more building. And that's part of what Pam's concerned with. I think some people see that and they don't want that. Other people may feel differently. But the fact is, if it was sewered, then the possibility of people building homes out there and adding substantially more would have to be taken into consideration in this study, Jeff. I think you'd have to really kind of look at that because that could happen. That place could explode. And that's why it's controversial. I don't have any concern whatsoever about the politics of this because they've asked us to look at this. And so we're going to look at it. There's nothing, controversy is out there. Let them decide what they want to do. We've been asked to do a study. We've been asked to look at the possibility of taking them into the district, and we should do just that. And I'm not concerned with any of the politics of that. The rest of this, I thank you, Tom, for saying that. And Jeff, is Tom right? If we don't have another if we have a dry winter, we're not doing this. Is that correct?
There's some preliminary work that would happen anyway, but at some point we'll all be asking the weather predictors if we're going to have a wet winter or not. And if it's unlikely, there'll be a decision to make. It will be some guesswork. I mean, we'll all be trying to figure if we're going to get rain in the next, basically in January and February. So there still is a risk that we think we're going to get rain and we don't get it. That is the nature of flow monitoring in an area like this where you don't have constant rain or reliable rain in any given month. But so that'll be a decision for us and the district staff late in the year. Are we going to deploy the flow monitoring or not?
Okay. And will your study give us any information that might be helpful on I&I?
Yes, and in fact, that's why we need the rain, is so that what we want is a good, strong storm, so that we can say when it rains like it did that day, this is what happened in the sewer system, and we make the model mimic that, and then we can say, okay, if it rained harder, what would it do? And the model is a tool for predicting what it would do under different rainfall conditions than what actually occurred next January or February.
And if you did this study and we had a wet winter, this is my last question. I'll turn it over to Michael after this. How long are you on this study? The rain flow part of the study.
Yeah, that's a good, I can look and see what the period was. I apologize for not having that on the tip of my tongue here.
Excellent. I love those questions.
The proposal said 60 days.
Okay.
Thank you, Tom. Appreciate that, Director Gaffney. Yeah, that would be, that's the length of time that, that VNA will have flow meters in the ground.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think we're also hoping, Doug, to see, because of the 06 study and the 2014 study now in 2022 or maybe 23, depending on weather, we'll be able to connect the dots on the same locations. You know, we were careful to select the same manholes or very close so that we can compare what the storm did back then and then midway through all the work and then now at the end of a lot of work. So that the hope is we'll be able to demonstrate what we achieved. And I think it informs a broader discussion, you know, at the AWWA level, you know, what's possible. You know, this district has gone $100 million into debt to meet a challenging cease and desist order and really invested in these 3 areas I mentioned earlier. And, you know, I think the federal and state agencies can learn from this data set at the same locations at 3 points in time with investment to learn about what is possible in I&I control, because frankly, federal and state agencies aren't real sure what's possible. And so we're going to help inform that dialogue.
Okay, Michael.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to chime in a little bit. We didn't ask to do this. I know that Steve Moore was approached by the Woodacre San Geronimo area out there. Is this within the realm of possibility? I also have some knowledge out there that a lot of the septic systems are very, very old and failing, and it may not be able to be replaced or fixed or whatever. And this may eventually be a big environmental issue out there with failing septic systems. And so I really am in favor of doing this study, not so much that we're going to do it, but to find out, is there any possibility that it could happen? And to help us just to maintain our watershed that we like in the North Bay here. So in favor of doing this. And I'm sure that if it were to eventually happen, and they could figure out the politics out there in the valley, that they would figure out how to get the money to do the improvement to make it happen and hook into our system, and then pay rates just like every other ratepayer in the whole system. So that's it.
Thank you. Yeah, we're looking out for our ratepayers, but I do think that's important to mention the larger watershed impact. Okay, any other comments or questions on this item? We don't have any public to take it out to. So if no more discussion, I'll entertain a motion.
I'd move to authorize the general manager, upon review and approval of council, to approve task order number 2 with West Yost in the amount of $299,800 for flow monitoring and system capacity hydraulic evaluation.
Second.
Michael seconds. Julia, roll call vote, please.
Thank you. Borstein,
Yes, ma'am.
Gaffney,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Meigs,
Aye.
Scylla,
Yes,
unanimous vote. Thank you.
thank you. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks.
Thank you, Jeff, for joining us and for the work on the study.
You bet. Thank you for adjusting your agenda. Very much appreciated.
Take care.
Oh,
All
that's
right.
it. You can leave if you have to stay and watch the rest of it.
It's committee's report out next. All right, agenda item number 4, committees report out. Finance committee. Tom, would you like to tell everyone what we talked about at the finance committee?
Basically, the Finance Committee goes over in more detail the items on the consent calendar relating to finances and or costs. And we pretty much reviewed everything. Our finances look fine. I think there's a couple of little tag-along items on our financial reports that we'd like to take a look at. One is it's on the key indicators. There's project funds remaining in a nominal amount, and then there continues that funds for Canyon Road, and we kind of like to resolve those, maybe get them off the key indicators. Get them out of the restricted. In other words, spend them for what they're for, and see what's happening on Canyon Road again. Other than that, we had a good discussion on the Lateral program, which we'll bring up as a discussion of the board. Anything else, Mary? Is that about it? Okay.
We just go over all the financial things in detail, and Tom asked a lot of great questions. Was there an ad hoc education and outreach committee meeting this past month?
There was not. We postponed.
Oh,
Julia nodded.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was thinking about the human resources one. I apologize. We postponed the human resources one. Yes, we had a very long outreach, and what was the other one? We had a second meeting right after that, Julia.
The business plan committee.
Right. Pam, do you want to do that? You there? Yeah, you're there.
It was 3 hours.
It was. Now I'm trying to think else.
Lordy. I don't have that kind of brain anymore. Isn't it an agenda item on here tonight? We actually reviewed last year's business plan and compared it to this year. There were some changes.
I'm sorry, Director Meigs, I don't want to derail you. The Ad hoc Education Outreach Committee is technically first on the agenda. Are there any comments or report outs on that?
We talked about meeting with what was the organization again, Julia, please, the one that's helping us with the Comcast and with the other outreach to commercials. Are
you referring to Gold Street Studios?
Yeah.
Is that right,
Yeah.
Steve?
Yeah.
Yes,
Are we planning on meeting them? Yeah. We talked about the ads. We talked about reviewing that. To be honest with you, I'm a little unprepared for this because I don't have that agenda in front of me, and it was 3 hours, and by the end of it, my mind was numb.
Right.
Most of it was the second part, the business plan, but and I was expecting it to be 3 hours. So,
Yeah.
Okay, so
Steve?
I think we did talk more about,
Can you assist me, Steve?
yeah, well, we talked more about education, doing more education, I know that. But it was about educating the community about what does a spill look like. That was discussed. But Steve, you had more ideas.
oh yeah, very well. We introduced you to Courtney Buell, who's a part of her work will be assisting with outreach or in the website and just public information because of her background before she was hired here as a management analyst in the engineering department. And so she's working with Gold Street on a new public service announcement based on your direction to respond to that recent SSO in April when somebody called a plumber instead of calling us for a sewer spill, and it went on for 6 hours, and it kept going and going, and then ended up polluting the creek. And so we're using that as a teachable moment, an item to use as a basis for another public outreach message that can go both on our website, but also adapt it as part of that format we have for the other public service announcements for keeping wipes out of toilets, keeping fats, oils, and grease out of the sewers, and properly disposing of your medications. So that's underway, and actually we've been working on the script.
We also talked about the Larkspur Landing project and the outreach for that. We have a thought that we'd have a questionnaire, and Pam and I had some thoughts on making even the questionnaire open to the public before, I kind of kept saying about Larkspur Landing from the start, blank piece of paper, blank piece of paper, blank piece of paper. So, we discussed that with Steve, and it may be a little challenging, but we talked about having some sort of an open house with the public to talk about the beginning of the Larkspur Landing situation. What are we going to do? What questions do we want to ask the public? Do we want the public involved in the questions we ask? Because I really don't want to go to the public with, so many times the public is given sort of, it's all open and it's transparent, but here are the questions we're going to ask, and the questions are part of the project. So we talked about that. It may be challenging. I'm not sure Steve enjoyed that part too much, but Pam and I thought that was important. So we can talk about that as we move forward on that project. But we did have a long discussion on that. And we talked about participation in public events now that COVID is ending. So we talked about maybe if there are events such as Country Fair Day or something going on in Fairfax or Larkspur, we may begin to participate in those as well.
That sounds great. So now Ad Hoc Business Plan Committee.
We reviewed the business plan and we didn't make an awful lot of changes because we had spoken about that before. We approved it and I think that's been before this board as well. So it did go on for some time.
I heard. All right, Central Marin Sanitation Agency. Doug or Michael, who wants to report on that for us?
I'll give it a try here. Item G of the consent calendar was we signed off on the revised Ross Valley Sanitary District Fats, Oils, and Grease Source Control Program Agreement that we agreed to on the last meeting last month. Kate Brule retired after many years, and so we are hopefully in very capable hands with her replacement, Adriana, who she has now been training for a bunch of months, and I know that Kate will be available in case we need her. We had a choice. We had to come up. We're early next year. We're going to be bringing online the 1.3 megawatt Jenbacher engine that we purchased, which is 30% more efficient. It'll have a nameplate label of 999 kilowatts, not quite 1 megawatt because that's what we're required to do by PG&E in order to keep. It has to do with what rates and the amount of paperwork that's required to go to the next level is a little bit absurd. So we're gonna maybe in the future, if the laws change such that we won't have to do that, we'll be able to, by just changing the nameplate on the engine, be able to go up to 1.3 megawatts and sell even more energy back, which right now is a moot point because last month, you know, those lovely domes that we have, those two bright green domes that are the digesters where we create biogas. Well, there's an inner layer where the gas is contained inside the digester, and then there's an air layer, and then there's an outer layer, and the outer layer ripped quite badly, rendering that digester not useful at this time. But our staff responded brilliantly and were able to drain the digester and bring it offline and get it under control. And so at this point, it's completely drained out. The cover, as of today, the new cover has been ordered. When the covers were first put in, Santa Fe required us to have green covers, which is special so it would blend with the trees. But I guess in honor of the drought, they have now okayed that we can have a tan cover so it can blend in with the rest of the brown hills out and back.
You know,
So,
I was thinking about that today, Michael. That's going to be a little weird because we're going to have a green one next to a tan one, but I guess we're going to have to replace the other green one at some point.
oh, absolutely. I mean, that's actually, this was all in the CIP for the next 5 years because they were coming up on their useful life. The weird thing is that the company who provided us with the covers came out 2 months ago and said they're in really, really good shape for covers that are that old. But even, you know, stuff happens, so it happened. But now the covers have been ordered, and that company is going to contact GSE, which, excuse me, put on the covers the last time and are currently doing work on site. So they're already mobilized. And this is a little bit of an emergency because we can't generate power. We're having to, we're down to 50% of what we can do, which includes powering our system on sites, which means we're spending a lot of money on PG&E. to buy power. Anyway,
If I could just say on that, Michael, I went down with Jason and I did an inspection of that. There's a ladder that goes right up to the top, and those covers are thick, and it's a huge project. I mean, this is a mess. So it's unfortunate.
yeah, but we received an email from Jason today saying that hopefully, I can tell you that in September sometime, we hopefully will be able to, hang on, I can tell you this in a second. The timeline is Evoqua is scheduled to remove the failed cover the week of 8/16, and the work will take a few days. Then they have to go in and clean the digester. For the main reason is that, while we've got the cover off and the digester is not filled, if it needs to have any maintenance that's done, the board has already approved, short of something spectacular that we don't know of, for Jason to go ahead and get it cleaned and any maintenance that needs to be done on the inside of the digester done. After cleaning and any interior repairs, Evoqua will install the new cover. This work will take a week and require the digester to be filled with recycled water first. Installation is temporarily scheduled for the week of 9/13. And after the cover installation, then they need to be able to start to feed the digester with primary and secondary sludges. And that should take about a month to bring a digester back online once you take it offline. So it's kind of a big deal to do this. And we're very happy that Sanitary agreed to have a tan cover, because otherwise we were going to have to get a white cover and paint it green. Have Jason out on a lift spray painting the cover, because last time they were very clear that they would only take green.
And the green takes about another 8 months.
Yeah, 6 to 8 months extra to get it in. We're going to be doing a study on, we right now at the district create secondary cleaned water, which our district is absolutely making use of. And Steve will tell you that our trucks have been doing outstanding in filling up with secondary cleaned water to do all the flushing of our systems out in the far reaches of the district. So we're going to be doing a study to find out what would it take to have the next step of cleaning done, so that if somebody wanted to take a 10 or 15 gallon container down to the district, they could fill up with water and use it on their landscaping at their house or other things. It's not potable, so you won't be able to drink it or anything like that, but it would be available for other uses at that point. Some discussion was taking place about, other than the district, where could people, possibly fill up? And there is a line which goes from Cmsa to Larkspur Landing. So it was discussed that would be part of the study, is could people go and fill up there, as well as us fill up there. And other possibilities, there's some interest about possibly getting it out to golf courses and things like that in Sanitary, Peacock Gap in particular. But my understanding from talking to Jason is the capital involved with getting it pumped out there would be absolutely enormous and probably not doable at this time. That was pretty much about it.
Well, hang on.
Okay.
We also accepted the completion of the second clarifier, so that project is now finished. And we also changed officers with the vice chair,
Eli Beckman
becoming the chair, and then the San Rafael rep, Mary Beth Bushy, doesn't wish to go into the officers rotation, so Dean Giovanni moved back into vice chair. And I'm the secretary, but the secretary seat for Ross Valley is held by Ross Valley. It's not a person, it's a position. So later today, we're voting for officers again, and whatever happens, the second Ross Valley representative would fill that seat. That was the deal. Is it belongs to the agencies. And by the way, Michael was warmly congratulated on his year as service as president of the board by all.
Thank you.
Good job.
Okay, glad to hear all that. North Bay Watershed Association. Pam, was there a meeting this month?
Yes, their guest speaker was Mark Brown, who is, I think he is he's in charge now of the MWPA, which is the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority, the one you're all paying for if you're a property owner. And they are doing all kinds of things such as education, defensible space, vegetation management. They're starting to look at an evacuation program, and they just put into place a grant program. Public education continues, and they just celebrated their first year. And it is an agency formed with an executive committee, which is, I think, 17 elected officials. And then they have an operations committee with various managers and electeds, and some firemen on that. And then they have an advisory technical committee. So they've done amazingly well for a first year for a JPA. Bruce Goins is the chair, and he's awesome. So there also is a seniors exemption that they put into effect. I think that date just expired, and you get a discounted fee. And the fee is based on, I believe, on your square footage of your house. On top of that, they also have a group of environmentalists called ESP, which means Ecologically Sound Practices Partnership. And they have been meeting actually right after we all voted for, I believe it was Measure C that passed. And it is a group of environmentalists from all over the county, many different kinds of groups. And so they created a draft, and they just recently finished it, and I've been attending the meetings all year on that. And the draft discusses these issues which I just defined, such as vegetation management, et cetera. And that's going to be reviewed, and I assume it will be probably skimmed down, and it does follow CEQA. So they are just really doing well. And so anyway, if you have a chance, you could drop into one of their meetings. There's an amazing group of people that came together in a short period of time and accomplished a lot. So that's my report.
If I can add to that, the Marin Wildfire Protection Agency reached out to the Coalition of Sensible Taxpayers to alert their subscribers to that discount because the coalition does a email blast every year about all the agency's senior exemptions. So Cost did reach out to their 60,000 subscribers to let them know about that wildfire discount, which I thought was nice of them to proactively go out and ask people to publicize that for the behalf of the senior citizens who are on fixed incomes.
Great, thank you. All right, agenda item number 5, verbal report by general manager.
Thank you, President Silla. For this month's GM report, I have about 6 items. I'll go quickly through them. The first is the Larkspur Landing property. As of last Thursday, EPA staff were closely reviewing the final completion report. And so we're expecting a no further action letter from them in the coming month. Second item, 1111 Anderson. We received comments on the latest iteration of the proposed lease from Comcast Corporation. And it's good news. You know, the comments really centered around items that we believe are right in line with what, you know, the original notice of intent that we had worked on them about a year ago. So I think we're coming around to agreement. The holdover provisions we were concerned about seem reasonable now that we've looked at in detail at the language. So there's only one remaining item, which is the penalties if we're running late on construction of the space that they are going to occupy, you know, the tenant area. And I think we're going to be able to come to some agreement on that won't harm the district's interests. So we're really coming around on the 1111 Anderson lease. I don't want to, you know, put bad luck on it, but we think this time next month we may be able to let you know we executed it. So, you know, it's that possible.
Tom, Steve, can I just ask, have they given up on the extension of the 14-year? You know, their lease runs out. Well, now it's not 14 years. Now it's like 12 years. They wanted to extend that. They threw the towel in on that. Is that right?
That's right. Really, now it's much more reasonable just in terms of a phasing out. And after 90 days, it's pretty much done. You know, there is a reasonable holdover as opposed to month to month in perpetuity, which we were concerned about. And so, okay, and the third item is the cease and desist order. There was a momentous date, June 30th, 2021. It was the last date that's actually in the cease and desist order from the Regional Water Board. It was centered around getting the pipe defects addressed. I may have made some note of this, but I think it's worth repeating. We had, you know, we had about 45 defects remaining as of March. I assigned 29 of those in-house repair crew. He actually took on 2 additional ones and got 31 done a month ahead of time. And so I want to recognize publicly Repair Supervisor Manny Vigil. He, you know, not only met the deadline, he met it a month ahead of time, and he took on additional work. And these were not the low-hanging fruit. The reason why they were the last 45 of the 605 is because they were hard. They were larger diameter, more distant from manholes. So, you know, the farther you are from the manhole, the harder it is to be precise and effective on your repair. And they were up in the hills, so you had to hike equipment up there, and then the larger diameter work required a larger inflatable sewer plug, or PIG as we call them. So it was harder to wrestle that in. So I wrote a letter of superior performance to Manny Vigil and put it in his personnel file in recognition of superior performance, not just outstanding. It was just a great accomplishment of our repair crew to get us firmly in compliance. And then the remainder of the pipe defects are either under contract with the capital program or in process to be completed by year's end for sure. So this is a great accomplishment, you know, of our team coming together and getting the work done. And by the time we send our next annual report to the Regional Water Board, I'm confident that we'll be able to say it's all complete. And we might get a chance to be on the Water Board's agenda for rescission or a rescinding of the cease and desist order in the year 2022. So the last date we passed and we did well. The fourth item, just a quick drought update. You know, we are maximizing recycled water use, as we alluded, using the Cmsa Secondary 23 recycled water for sewer cleaning. Marin Municipal Water District has determined that we may keep the water meters on our vehicles for emergency use. And we'll see in a later item, but you know, in item 16A, which is our metrics report, our recycled water use in June doubled our normal recycled water use. So we were up at about 35,000 gallons a month. We recycled 73,000 gallons in June. So leading up to June, we were recycling using about 40% recycled water, 60% potable water. And I think we're going to flip it, significantly. And we have a management goal of 85% recycling, 15% potable. But I think we're going to beat that, and we're going to continue to watch the data. Now, why are we going to be able to beat that? Because we don't have purple pipe in Ross Valley like they do in Las Colinas. Las Colinas, they got these purple hydrants, and it's a lot more. It's feasible to implement Marin Municipal Water District's prohibition in Las Colinas. It's a challenge in Ross Valley, but as it turns out, good fortune that the board approved the district purchasing 2 new ramjet vehicles in last year's budget. Now, these are long lead time items. Now, this is my 5th update today, is that the 2 ramjets, these are $265,000 vehicles, and they're jetters, high pressure hydrojetting, and they can use recycled water with the proper filtering up front. And so we equipped them. They were delivered in June. One was finalized there in early July. It takes many months for this type of specialized equipment that was authorized a year ago. And we're currently developing SOPs for the new vehicles and are being trained on them, and staff are enthusiastic about having the new equipment. But it turns out we're using the old ramjets as water trucks. They have the, 3,000 gallon, something like that, or 2,500 gallon tanks on the ramjet, for the jetting, using typically potable water. So now we fill up in the morning, we fill the new ramjet and the old ramjet with recycled water, and we head up into the system, and we're sometimes able to get the work done maybe with one return trip of the old ramjet going, while we're doing the work in parallel. So we're refining the process to really maximize recycled water use, thanks to the good fortune of having this extra water truck capacity. So, hitting multiple objectives with these new vehicles, because the old ramjets were costing us a lot of money on repairs, constantly going out of service. Even up to last month, we paid for a repair of the old ramjet in late May, leading up to getting that new ramjet in June. So it couldn't come soon enough, and we're pleased to let the board know that that's really been rolled out successfully and getting multiple objectives. Final thing to report on, you might recall you approved a cost recovery program in November. That is for interagency assistance. If other local agencies ask for our personnel forces and equipment to accomplish goals, we'll help out maybe one day, or do some training with them without charging them. It's pretty uncommon to charge fellow agencies, but if they have multiple days of work that they need to get done, and if we have available bandwidth, we can do the work, train their staff. And so you approved a cost recovery program because there's been some requests out there for assistance. There's 2 possible cost recovery activities coming up in the next month or 2. One is City of Larkspur has asked us to do CCTV work for their storm drain system. And the other one is Tamalpais Community Services District. They're responsible for the collection system upstream of both Sausalito, Marin City, and SASM treatment plants up in the Tam Valley area. And they've requested our assistance doing smoke testing. So those are 2 items where the cost recovery program that you adopted may bear out some activity in the coming weeks. We always are mindful of the work we need to get done, and so the work we would do for other agencies is carefully planned so that we make sure we get our metrics accomplished. And that's all I have for my verbal report. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Steve? That's all great news. I love that we're using lots of recycled water. Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the consent calendar. Does anyone have any, oh, sorry, no, the verbal report by board members and requests for future items. Does anyone have anything to report or have any requests for future items? Board members.
I'd just like to ask that at some point we put on an agenda item for the theoretical costs of sewering San Geronimo. And I think that'd be very basic, not detailed, but just like give us a ballpark. But anyway, at some point.
Okay, now we'll move on to agenda item number 7, the consent calendar. There's a lot on this consent calendar. Do folks have things they want to pull off? Tom, were we going to pull off something from our finance committee?
I'd like to pull off H.
Okay. Anybody else have anything they want to pull off?
D.
D. All right, if that's all, then let's go to item D, the IT hub, $70,000 for the IT hub.
I just want to make sure, Steve, that we're getting everything we can on ensuring that we never get hacked. If we're spending this kind of money on a small agency, we got to make sure that nothing gets in, especially since we're going to the new building. We have new work going on there. We're probably going to need other IT services before we get in there, cabling and what have you. Who knows? It's what we had to do. I'm in our brand new offices right now, and we had cabling people in here for 3 days. But I want to make sure we don't get hacked. So I'd like to make sure that a good part of that work this year is ensuring our internal security.
So noted. Felicia, do you have anything to add on that?
I'm happy to address that. I think one of the distinct advantages that we have using IT Hub is not just that we're getting, can you guys hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay, great. Not that just that we get individualized service from Ryan Kudia, who you all know, and his staff, but that they're part of a larger IT service provider called, I have it here, the Managed IT Service Provider, the MSP. And so that gives them muscle, unlike maybe some other smaller IT service providers. They have the whole backing of Microsoft, giving them best practices for exactly the kinds of preventative care that is so important to, in today's environment. And the other thing that I'll just mention, in addition to making sure that our firewalls and that kind of thing are all up to current standards, that we're also looking at, in fact, we should be launching this very shortly, what are called micro trainings. So what they'll do is that they'll give all of our staff, because interestingly, the most vulnerable that the district and any organization can be is when somebody from inside the organization unknowingly or unwittingly exposes the organization's system. And so what we are doing now is to make sure that all of our staff are properly trained on all of the many different ways that we can be unknowingly vulnerable. So it's a many layered, many tiered approach to protecting our system. So I feel very confident that we're doing everything that we can. I'm not saying that we're completely impenetrable, but I am saying that we have taken every imaginable measure, within our purview.
I'm glad to hear that. Thank you.
All right, seeing nothing else. Oh, Tom, do you want to go to 7H?
Right. On page 67 of our agenda, the Finance Committee studied this, and we wanted the board to weigh in on Section 3, Item 5. Do we really want to get three estimates from the plumbers? And remember, we eliminated them on the grant program. but they resurfaced here. And so, the discussion is, I don't think we need them. And I think, Doug, you met with the plumbing contractors, and it's difficult to get them because they're all busy and they have to spend a lot of time and not get paid to do these estimates. And we figured that, gee, since we're lending the money and they're going to pay it back, we're probably protected on that. So I would like to say that we eliminate that we could put language like we recommend getting several estimates, but it's not required.
I couldn't agree with you more, Tom. If they get a bad estimate or they're paying too much, that's on them. It's not on us. And moving into this,
half the money.
Yeah, moving into this new building and working with a big company, everything required 3 estimates, and it was a real pain in the butt to get moving companies, cabling people, all sorts of people. It's a pain in the neck. So I couldn't agree with you more. I'd like to get rid of that.
So are we going to say minimum of 2, or are we just going to say, are we going to eliminate an estimate requirement altogether?
We recommend getting several estimates. That's all. Don't you think?
Nope, I don't.
Okay.
I think it's on the homeowner. We'll get them alone.
So direction to staff is to eliminate the requirement for estimates altogether. Steve, are you wanting to weigh in?
One idea I had for your consideration to make it simple and would be to simply change one word. So on page 67, section 3, number 5, right now it says the property owner must obtain 3 estimates, etc. We could change the word must to the word should. And then it wouldn't, then staff would have the flexibility, to say, well, you should, but you don't have to. That would be the easiest way for you to eliminate the 3 required estimates.
No, I don't agree with that, because I think if you say should and then you leave it to staff, somebody's going to go out and they're going to, you're just wasting people's time. You're wasting the plumber's time. I'm not opposed to putting a line in like Tom suggested that said, we recommend it's nice to have. I'd just leave it out altogether, frankly. But
okay, so.
Yeah, Steve, should kind of means you have to do it. You should,
So it sounds like the recommendation on the table is to strike that first sentence in its entirety, and then the second sentence where it says the district has the discretion to provide, and this is the loan agreement, the contractual assessment funds, in the amount not to exceed either, and then we're going to strike A, right, because that's no longer relevant. The actual cost of construction of the work performed, and then we're going to strike. So it's not, so we're really just going to be providing a loan based on a total amount not to exceed $25,000, whatever the estimate is.
Well, don't we do 50% as well?
Julia, help me remember that. Is there a 50%?
Oh.
Yeah, so it was 50%. I think Director Gaffney may be reviewing the grant requirements. It was 50% of the construction cost up to $1,500 or $2,500. Currently, the loan covers the entirety of the work. And if I may offer a point of information, we determine their initial approval amount for the loan based on the estimate that they provide at time of application. So I just want to offer that. I don't know how that would affect the administration of the program if we didn't have an estimate as part of the application.
Why don't we say the property owner must obtain at least one estimate?
Okay, I like it.
and then everything else stays the same, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
The low,
Well, as Felicia described, you'd strike A and you'd move the last, the part after the comma on B.
Right.
well, no,
I think
at least one. No, you don't even have to change anything. I don't think. The lowest of a qualified bid.
Of any qualified bids.
Yeah, of any.
How about any qualified?
If you're asking for only one estimate, why would the homeowner bother to send us 3, even if they got 3?
They don't have to.
Right, so what's the point?
Why don't we just say a qualified bid?
Fine.
Okay.
When we're saying qualified,
I like that actually, Tom, because if the district sees a bid from, Joe's Taco Shop, they might say, no, they're a great taco shop, but they're not going to be doing your lateral work. Sorry. So I actually like that.
so if I understand correctly, Julia, if a bid comes in that they get and it's a ridiculous bid, let's say it's, if our guys look at it and say, geez, they're asking for 25 grand and this should be a $5,000 project because the homeowner's in cahoots with whoever to pay for the cost of doing it and then put $10,000 in their own pocket, thanks to the district, we would be able, our engineers might be able to look at that and go, whoa, that is way too high and we're not going to accept that bid or estimate for the loan.
That is a good practice, but it's not currently in the language of the ordinance.
That's right. I like it.
Is there anything that we can do to protect the homeowner against a bad bid?
I believe, yeah, I believe that was a key component of having multiple bids be a requirement, so they could have a comparison. I'm sure that staff can work on language that would.
Yeah, I was going to say, why don't we ask, how does everyone feel about asking staff to work on this and bring it back to us next month? Is it emergency? Does it need to happen this month?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
I would just like to think about it because I would suspect that the majority of homeowners in the Ross Valley have really no idea about the cost of plumbing, and an illegitimate or unscrupulous firm could come out and make a ridiculous offer, and 93-year-old grandma wouldn't know, no disrespect to the 93-year-old grandmas, might not know better and get a ridiculous loan, which anyway, if we can, some mechanism to protect against unscrupulous plumbers. It's not just, it is our money that we're lending to them at a low interest rate.
Okay, but Michael, are we covering it with the lowest of a qualified bid submitted to the district by the property owner? So what does qualified mean?
That's the question.
I'd like to know what Andrea was going to say.
It seems to me that part of requiring 3 estimates, or at least 2 or more, and then giving the district the discretion to only pay for the lowest, is also to protect the public funds. And so my concern about just leaving it all on the homeowner is, in some ways, Michael's concern that somebody could get swindled, but then also the district doesn't want to loan that much money if it doesn't have to. So that, I just wonder about what the reason was for obtaining more than one estimate, and if we want to consider that in evaluating this language.
Well, I would not be totally opposed to having 2 bids. I just think 3 bids is burdensome. I just went through this. I mean, I literally just went through this, and it's a pain in the neck.
So we took them all out of the grant program. So
It's just we're only giving them $1,500. So what do we care?
Okay. There's a limit to what we're giving. So okay, same reasoning doesn't apply. Okay, well that sounds like a good, protection of public funds, medium argument.
So must obtain 2 estimates. At least,
If you're saying that, then I'm okay with saying we suggest getting it more than 2, but 2 is the minimum. I'm fine with that.
at
Or
least,
at
two.
least 2.
At least 2, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So if we make that change, then are we okay to move forward with approving this tonight? Okay. So staff, is that clear?
Yes.
Having gone all the way around the block. At least, thank you. Thank you, Andrea, for weighing in. That made it clear. Was there anything else on this on 7H, Tom, that we wanted to discuss?
Didn't you have one point about, was it consistent, making it consistent with the grant program, making the application is, wasn't there something you had, Mary? Or was it involved?
There was something, but I thought the point was made to me that there was a reason for them to be inconsistent. Julia?
Can you remember, Julia?
I believe the point was brought up about whether we should change the loan program to be consistent with the proposed grant program. However, the loan program, because it is such a large amount of money being offered, the ceiling is significantly higher. The function for the rate payers is different, so they often opt into the loan program when they don't have the money or don't want to pay the initial complete cost. Whereas if we made it like the grant program, the homeowner would have to pay the complete cost, and we would have to sort of rework it in order to institute that loan.
With respect to whether you could be paid retroactively after you started the project. Sorry, that's the, so yes, we talked about whether you could be reimbursed after you started the project, and Julia had made the point that these are very different in structure, that we wouldn't give the loan, or we give the loan to the property owner, and give the grant to the contractor, correct?
We pay the contractors directly with the loan,
Pay the contractors
relieving the homeowner or whoever is doing the work from having to pay for that cost up front.
Yes. So the making them the same, which I thought was a good idea, Julia explained to me why it was not a good idea. So
Right.
great.
There won't be any customers that pay for the whole lateral and then come back and say, we want to get a loan for it.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, so are we ready to move the consent calendar?
I move the
Remove.
calendar.
The consent calendar.
I heard Michael loudest, so
Well, second then.
Tom will second. Thank you. Julia, roll call vote, please.
Yes, thank you. Borstein,
Yes.
Gaffney,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Meggs,
Aye.
Scylla.
Aye.
Unanimous vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 8, conduct a public hearing and consider adoption of Resolution 21-1607, approving the report of sewer service charges for fiscal year 21-22, and direct the filing for charges for the collection by the county tax collector. Steve. Please.
Yes, each year we have to approve the report of sewer service charges for the current fiscal year and authorize the submission of the charges to Marin County for inclusion on the annual property tax bills. And so this is an annual exercise, but the rate increases were adopted as a 5-year plan in 2019. And next time Prop 218 comes to play is in 2024. And so these rate increases were already duly noticed and adopted. And but this is an annual process of having the public hearing and considering adoption of the resolution that approves these charges and transmits to the county. And Andrea and Felicia, feel free to add anything else I may have missed.
I think that covers it.
The only thing I'd add is that we should go through the motions of opening a hearing, asking if there are any comments, and closing a hearing, even though I don't see any members of the public, because the statute is very specific about this, even though it seems like it's not worthy of a public hearing.
All right, then I will open the hearing, the public hearing. Are there any members of the public who wish to comment on this resolution or this item? Hearing none, I will close the hearing. Is there any more comment from the board members? And if not, I'll entertain a motion.
I move for the board to consider all protests and objections to the report of sewer service charges for the fiscal year 21-22, and 2, adopt resolution number 21-1607, approving the report of sewer service charges for the fiscal year 2021-22, and direct the filing of charges for collection by the county tax collector.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you, Tom. Julia, roll call vote, please.
Thank you. Borstein,
Yes.
Gaffney,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Meggs,
Aye.
Priscilla.
Aye.
Unanimous vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item number 9, consideration of adopting resolution 21-1608, amending the framework and guidelines for the lateral replacement grant program. Steve.
Well, great. This was a team effort of staff responding to a series of ratepayers that came to the board concerned that they didn't understand when in the process they were eligible to get a lateral grant. And so when the board directed us to take a look at our process, staff got together and came up with improvements to the permit application process that will create more clarity for this issue of whether folks are eligible for the grant or not. So now it'll be, and then also I want to credit staff for doing a little research and looking at other sanitary districts and how they operate their programs. And we looked at, I think it was Sanitary District 2, Corte Madera, and I think it was, was it Richmond? Okay, City of Richmond Sewer District, or the sewer agency there. So I want to credit Julia for putting together the staff report, and Felicia, and of course our senior coordinator, Christina Velazquez, really led the effort to redefine the permit application process. She worked with our inspectors, Aaron Dillingham and Fred Guerrero, and we came up with a way to improve that process in terms of getting more information in the application. And now we won't have the misunderstandings that we saw with people realizing they might be eligible after it was too late. So the first step was a permit application that was properly noticed in April. We initiated the new application in May. It's going very well according to the inspectors. It's made their job much more efficient because they have less guesswork going out into the field. And so it's been in place since May, and that gave us time to pull together these proposed changes to the enabling resolution for the lateral grant program. And some of the details are there. And with that, I can hand it to either Felicia or Julia if you want to highlight any of the changes to the grant program beyond that, which I just described.
Thank you, Steve. No, I think that the work that was done by staff, as you pointed out, was very comprehensive, and it was a group effort. So we had a lot of eyes on this as an agency in different departments, finance and the clerk and the front office staff and the inspectors. So we're now interested to hear what the board's review looks like. So thank you.
Are we backdating this? There was some issues on this with a couple of ratepayers. Is there anything we're doing on their behalf?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. Our most recent inquiry for retroactive grant application came from, Julia, help me remember his name, Russell Shaw. Russell Shaw. And we did make sure that he would in fact be eligible for the retroactive grant under these new parameters. Unfortunately, the requester prior to that would not be eligible, but it's just a matter of timing for this. So at the board's discretion, we can certainly consider some other parameters, but this was what made sense to us to have the cutoff of, I think it's 6 months, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, technically 180 days, but effectively 6 months.
Right.
And what was the other ratepayers' timeline?
It was last year. If you recall, it was, I think it was April, May of last year.
Okay.
And this is another thing to point out is that, you know, there was research done on other programs offered by other agencies, and 180 days is consistent with those other programs.
Okay.
If we were to reach out to other people who are beyond that, how many people, residents, would we be talking about? A handful?
If I recall, from a little over a year ago when we had these questions asked, there were several folks who were being turned away on a regular basis. It was, I think, an estimate last year to that point, in 3 months, there were 20 people.
Oh.
So I think you'd be dealing with a lot of people.
Let's keep it as written.
Thank you.
Any other questions, board members? One of the things this does is moves a lot of stuff into the application that was in the ordinance formerly. And so that allows the staff to just handle it in the application and simplifies our ordinance, which I think is a good idea. If I don't hear any more questions, may I have a motion?
I move that we approve resolution number 21-1608, amending the framework and guidelines of the lateral replacement grant program.
I second that, and I like the flow chart, by the way.
I love the flow chart too. I said that in the finance committee. I love a good flow chart.
I'll tell Christina, she worked very hard on it.
Julia, may I have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, thank you. Borstein,
Yes.
Gaffney,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Megs,
Aye.
Philip,
Yes.
unanimous vote. Thank you.
Is that flow chart available on the website?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep. Now that it's approved, it will be.
Agenda item number 10, consideration of awarding and authorizing the general manager upon review and approval of council to execute construction contract for the PS 14-24-25 Larkspur Pump Stations Improvements Project, project number 906, with Pacific Infrastructure Corporation in the amount not to exceed $1,632,500. Steve.
Thank you, President Silla. And Associate Engineer Phil Benedetti is here joining me. I'll introduce this bigger picture and then let Phil make a couple comments on the bid process. So we've been gearing up for this, the third major capital project of this summer. And so you're seeing this roll out of the 3 projects. This is the third for pump stations with a focus on backup power or new generators at 3 pump stations, and then significant upgrades at one of our major pump stations, pump station 14, Larkspur, located right next to Hall Middle School and just a block away from where we normally would have board meetings at the CMPA. So when we go back to the CMPA, we'll have an opportunity maybe to go walk over and take a look at how the pump station 14 project is going. Who knows? This will take many months. Pump station projects are vulnerable to supply chain issues because of the specialized equipment. And this one example is the VFD, the variable frequency drive that we put in the pump station 14 to create more energy efficiency, as well as just better operability and consistency with the other major pump stations that were recently upgraded. Pump station 14, the last major pump station out of our 5 to be upgraded under the cease and desist order requirements, the IMP from 2013. And then there's some site work as well. There's some roof repair there. Also a failing concrete deck that's been corroding because of the atmosphere of the sewer gases. We're putting in a stainless steel decking that will be much more sustainable. We're putting in state-of-the-art odor control because we're right next to the middle school, right where the parents drop off the kids and pick them up every day. So that's a little more expensive than the original estimates and budgets. And I will acknowledge that the bids that we received are over the engineer's estimate, unlike the other 2 capital projects for the last 2 months, which have come in under the estimate. But there is ample budget overall to absorb a little extra cost in these projects. And the cost items on the bid sheet that is an attachment here show that these are the, the odor control, the decking within the pump station just came in a little higher than the engineer was estimating. We are also rolling in a lot line adjustment between the city of Larkspur and the Larkspur Corte Madera School District. It's an artifact of how the property lines were drawn when the city of Larkspur had the sewer system prior to 1993, and the school district was concerned about our encroachment on their lands, and so we made a deal with them to swap property so that the pump station facilities are wholly within city of Larkspur lands and no longer encroaching on school district lands, and that some of the lands that were owned by city of Larkspur would be deeded over to the school district in an even swap. So there's no net change in acreage. And so it was a interesting exercise to go through, but they're on board. And this avoids discussions historically that have been had by our predecessors about the district not paying sewer service charges, as an exchange for the encroachment on their property. That didn't sit well with our current management. And so we got to the table with them and came up with a lot line adjustment approach to deal with that encroachment on paper. So anyway, that's been an amicable, constructive dialogue with the school district, and they're happy to see some changes we're making as part of this project to improve the functionality of their lands, including removal of a tree that blocks visibility for the parents driving in and dropping off their children. So that's a little side story, but I think it's worth mentioning because it's part of the overall project delivery. I do like to point out that the 2 generators on the smaller pump stations, they're still major pump stations along South Elysia. They pump local sewerage into the major force main system there. The generators at those stations were installed in the 1980s. And so they meet 1980s emission standards. I'll just leave it at that. That will be a good improvement. And also, just the standard backup power that is critical along that force main corridor. We can't spare expense. We spare no expense to make sure we have reliability along that corridor where the medical offices are. And it's as we've learned with the gravity sewer project, that's a safe route to schools. It's a busy area, and so getting that infrastructure up to modern standards is well worthwhile. So with that, I'd like to let Phil make some comments on sort of the bidding process and other, and also the suitability of the contract.
Thanks, Steve. So bids were publicly noticed back in May. We had a kind of an extended bidding period for this project. It was 5 weeks long. We wanted to make sure that everyone had enough time. And we only ended up receiving 2 bids, but the apparent low bidder and the one that we're asking to award the contract to tonight is Pacific Infrastructure Corporation. And I've had great experience working with them, with the city of Petaluma. They rehabbed several pump stations there. I just, at the direction of staff or from board members previously, I tried to get the contractor to show up tonight. He confirmed for yesterday, but their president, he just informed me that he's on his way to a family function and wouldn't be able to attend tonight. But I can definitely vouch for their ability to perform in these sorts of situations, coordination with staff during bypass pumping, and also quality of work. They're definitely a good contractor to go with. Their bid, as Steve mentioned, was 29% over the engineer's estimate, but also, as Steve said, most of that had to do with the equipment costs that came back differently than anticipated by our design team. And yeah, that's all I have. I'll answer any questions.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. Yeah, Pacific Infrastructure is well known to the design engineer, Newt Engineering, and they were very pleased that they were the low bid. But Fort Bragg Electric, it turns out, was also a very suitable contractor. So we had 2 highly qualified contractors, either of which worked out great.
Go ahead, Doug.
Who did our last pump stations, Steve?
Anderson Pacific.
And who did the ones before that?
They did them 12, 13, and 15 were all Anderson Pacific.
And do we have any clue why Anderson didn't bid?
I don't have I'm not really sure. It would be speculative.
Okay.
Fort Bragg did all the electrical at 15.
That's right.
And I believe they did an excellent job there. So.
Go ahead, Tom.
How come we only got 2 bids? Is this a complicated project?
You know, the number of bids kind of baffled me. There were a number of other contractors that I had spoken to that I was expecting to see bids from. A couple of them were kind of a no call, no show, I guess. I was expecting to see at least 2 more bids for this. I reached out, just asking, what had happened, but I haven't heard anything back. There was one contractor that said that the fact that the bid opening was the week of the holiday for 4th of July may have impacted his ability to bid the project, but I didn't think that was a really legitimate reason to not bid on a job. But yeah, it's a little bit baffling, but yeah, both of these bids were good ones to get, and yeah, I think that it's reasonable to move forward with PIC.
Sometimes if you're later in the year, in the construction season, you might have lower odds of more bids. It might be that some of our qualified bidders were able to land other work for the summer, but that's just speculative, really. We don't know all the things that went into that. And this isn't just summer work. Because of long lead items, we fully expect to be working through the wet season and just being careful and vigilant with bypass pumping, planning, and that sort of thing. It's possible to do this work through the calendar year. And we just recognize that's the reality with the long lead time items that's attributable to the pandemic.
Steve, we have 19 pump stations. How many will be redone with this?
Yeah, so of the 19, we have 5 majors, and pump station 14 is the 5th of the 5 majors to be renovated, and so that will be complete with the major pump station renovations. I count pump station 24 and 25 is sort of medium. They're kind of major, kind of minor, because they're pump stations, they're pumping into the force main, but they're not as high horsepower or as high a flow. They're still kind of localized flows going into the force main. So there are mid-range pump stations that are being renovated here and brought up to you know, they're not a full renovation, but getting the backup power and some upkeep of those facilities. So that's 7. And then the remainder are 12 smaller lift stations, which just have these smaller pumps, like 2 pumps, you know, 5 horsepower or so. And they're sprinkled around Larkspur here and there in the low-lying areas. And they were the subject of the IAMP lift station evaluation. And that was finalized and given to the regional board in March. And we have now put in the capital improvement program recommendations from that study. And we will be doing 1, maybe 2 of these minor lift stations each summer going forward. So we're already planning, and you may see a board item next month on a design proposal for the first of these minor lift stations. And it's a smaller, you know, deal. These renovations are more like $750,000 jobs. And the first one will be lift station 20, which is located right off of East Sir Francis Drake Boulevard in Larkspur Landing by the hospice. We have a plan going forward with the minor lift stations, but we do have 12 of them, and we have a thorough evaluation report that tells us what priorities there are to do, and specifically what repairs or equipment replacement are needed.
Steve, could we take a shot at putting a bid out to do all 12, seeing if we save money and cancel the project if we find we don't? Because, you know, if somebody had all 12, they might do them for 8 or 7 or something less than what you're anticipating the cost of those are.
Yeah, I appreciate the question. That's a possibility. You know, what we've done with the goal of the pay-go capital program, we've stretched out all the gravity and force main and pump station possible projects that the IAMP has given us with this update that is practically final now. And so our initial recommendation from that is to feather out the pump station renovations so that we don't have to issue any bonds, and that we just live off of, you know, what's the old saying? You know, you kill what you eat. Well, I don't know. Or you eat what you kill. I don't know.
That's the place.
But pay go, right? So if you want to go pay go, I don't think it's going to pencil out to do all 12 at once. I think you got to. Okay. But, you know, I appreciate the question. You know, we might get economies of scale, and it's not off the table. We could front load the lift station work, but then, you know, then we're gonna put off the gravity, sewer, and the force main work because there's only so much.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions on this item?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you.
I move that we authorize the general manager upon review of council to execute construction contract for the pump station 14, pump station 14, 24, 25, Larkspur Pump Station Improvement Project, project number 906 with Pacific Infrastructure Corporation in the amount not to exceed $1,632,500.
Second.
Thank you, Michael. Julia, roll call vote, please.
Yes, thank you. Borstein,
Yes.
Gaffney,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Meggs,
Aye.
Scylla,
Yes.
unanimous vote. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, board.
Thank you.
Now we go on to the negative mitigated negative declarations. For future, if we do this in the future, I would be okay with just having a link to the hundreds of pages. Because I imagine we need to publish it for public use, but It certainly was. Did you read all of this, Tom?
Yeah.
Good for you. I'm a lawyer who has a little
Well, I
secret
went
going on
through-
in my work, and I'm not, yes, go ahead.
I thumbed through on both of them, the, when they were out, just the charts of was there a problem? And there were, no, 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 no's. And then every now and then I saw a yes. And the yes was related to, do you have a plan if something happens? Yes. It was all no.
It was a good yes. Okay, sorry for being glib about this. Agenda item number 11, consideration of adopting resolution number 21-1609, adopting a mitigated negative declaration for Lower Fawn Drive Sewer Rehabilitation Project, project number 947. Steve.
Yes, often we can claim that replacing sewer infrastructure, existing sewer infrastructure, is categorically exempt from CEQA because on the basis that it's existing infrastructure less than a mile in length. It's common for utilities. However, with the passage of, I forget which Assembly Bill number it is, Andrea might have it memorized. I'm thinking 52 or 35.
52.
It is 52. AB 52 required an elevated level of review of cultural resources and requirement to do consultation with tribal representatives. And what we've learned through implementation of AB 52 in utility projects is in areas near known cultural resource deposits, there's more triggering of the need for a mitigated negative declaration document because of the seriousness of the cultural resource impact review made by the AB 52 requirements. So we're learning that, even though it's obviously disturbed, it's in the middle of the street and, backfill over pipe. It wasn't engineered backfill like we have today with a lot of Ross Valley sewers. They were installed, in this case, at Lower Fawn Drive, around 1949, right? So it's about 72 years ago. They weren't using, aggregate base rock at 95% compaction, with the drain rock around the pipe and the filter fabric like we do now. They were just throwing whatever was around soil materials over the pipe in 1949. So the cultural representatives, they say, hey, that backfill could have, evidence of cultural remains like shells, fragments, middens, and even some surface deposits they saw in the area. There was some evidence of that when they did a review. So it takes some getting used to, because you think, well, gee, this is, obviously longstanding utility. Well, that's the point from their standpoint, is back in the mid 20th century, nobody was paying attention to whether they were backfilling with sensitive cultural remains. So we take the precautionary approach required by AB 52, and that triggers the need for more of a full disclosure and analysis of potential, especially cultural resources. But in these areas near creeks, we also look at impacts to nesting birds and other things that we can avoid by taking certain precautions. So that's a lot of paper, I know, but we have to go through the checklist for the initial study, and then give the narrative disclosure of potential impacts with the mitigated negative declaration. And we're saying we're making a negative declaration about environmental impacts, but because we're doing mitigation measures, which, as Director Gaffney said, we have a plan in case we do encounter cultural remains in these sites. And it's under a half mile. What is it? It's about a quarter mile or so of sewer placement. But it looks good, and we're working really well with the tribes, and they do appreciate our sensitivity and cooperation. We did receive one comment from Fish and Wildlife They were wondering if the creek crossing, if we were disturbing bedded bank, and it's hard to see on the plans if that's the case. And so we responded with a drawing showing the distance from the culvert, and that, you know, our sewer is indeed above the creek culvert by a couple feet. So all of our work is totally isolated from the creek resources, and Fish and Wildlife was satisfied with that response and that no permit is necessary. So that's the long story about that. Sorry.
No worries, no worries. It's not as long as the paper in the packet. So this is new based on that new law that we would see this?
Well, we could see not relying on an exemption for any particular resource area that could be especially impacted by a certain project. So cultural resources may not be, may be the issue, and we're seeing it more often because of the consultation requirements. I think we've also done a mitigated neg deck in the past 2 or 3 years because we were going right through a creek and we had to do just some additional analysis on the effects and what the mitigation measures were. But a mitigated negative declaration is fairly low in the level of analysis that you have to do under CEQA. It's not a full-blown environmental impact report, which would take a whole lot more time and energy and money. So, and it's great that we didn't get any comments, and yeah, this is pretty clean.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions by the board?
I'd make a motion.
Please.
I would move to adopt resolution 21-1609, adopting a mitigated negative declaration for Lower Fawn Drive Sewer Rehabilitation Project, project number 947.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Michael? Michael held up 2 fingers.
No, I said, I just am speaking lightly.
Okay. Julia, roll call vote, please.
Thank you. Borstein,
Yes, ma'am.
Gaffney? You're muted, Director Gaffney.
Sorry, yes.
Thank you. Kelly?
Yes.
Thanks.
Aye.
Hello?
Aye.
Unanimous vote. Thank you.
Moving on to agenda item number 12, consideration of adopting resolution 21-1610, adopting a mitigated negative declaration for Shady Lane Sewer Removal Project, project number 994, located in Ross Creek. Here's where we're crossing a creek, I guess.
Uncrossing.
Steve.
Yes, so similar to the last item. This was triggered not so much on the cultural side, although that is part of this analysis, and we will, you know, we had a consultation with them. But this is one of those cases where you're trying to help the environment, but if you don't do it right, you could hurt the environment while you're helping the environment. So full disclosure of potential impacts. We did receive no comments. It was a very thorough report. This one was a little thicker because of the biological resources involved in terms of disclosing potential impacts. But the work is designed in a way to mitigate those impacts. You know, even the construction access to get down there to remove the sewer, we impact the stream bank. So we have a vegetation plan that has to be approved by the permitting agencies. So, you know, how was it that we had no comments on this mitigated neg deck, even though we were in the creek digging around, you know, using heavy equipment? And I think it's because of the thorough coordination that we had with the permitting agencies up front. You know, we've been, as you know, we've been working on this for 2 years. Did a geomorphic study to make sure we don't create flooding and erosion, and designed based on the geomorphic study. We shared that with the flood control district, town of Ross. We went to a multi-agency meeting of all the permitting agencies, got comments on the proposal, made modifications, did permit applications, and let's see if I can get it. Let's see, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, Regional Water Quality Control Board, California Department of Fish and Wildlife, and then Corps of Engineers has to consult because of sensitive species, steelhead, had to consult with NOAA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, Fisheries Management, Federal, and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for other sensitive species. So 5 state and federal agencies consultation, and no comments on this document. They're waiting to get the document certified, so they include it as part of their record for their permitting actions. So it's going well. With this adoption, this then supports the permit agency's actions, and we're on time to award a contract to a bidder next month and get the work executed in September to October. So lining everything up.
Didn't you tell us in a previous meeting that we got a grant for this work?
Indeed. Yes, we got a grant for 20,000 and change, which is great. The work itself, we have an engineer's estimate of 107,000. We've already solicited bids. We opened bids last Friday under Ordinance 110, the Uniform Public Contract Cost Accounting Act. We have our ordinance where we can do informal bids for projects under 200,000. We targeted contractors with expertise in slope stabilization and creek work, and they're coming in right around the engineer's estimate. We haven't finalized that, but we'll have that for you in August, and it's looking favorable. So that it could be that this grant covers 1/4 of the construction cost.
And how much did this cost us?
Yeah, 25,000, something like that. Yeah.
And $1,000 for printing. Sorry.
Okay.
All right. Do I have a
I'd
motion?
like to make a motion. I made the last one
I'd like to make a motion.
already.
I'd like to move that we adopt Resolution 211610, adopting a mitigated negative declaration for Shady Lane Sewer Removal Project, project number 944, located in Ross Creek.
I'd second that.
Doug,
Doug seconded. Okay, Julia, roll call vote, please.
Thank you. Borstein,
yes.
Gaffney,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Meggs,
Yes.
Priscilla.
Yes,
Thank you. Unanimous vote.
thank you.
Thank you, board. Now we're onward with the permits.
So we've already done agenda item number 13, and so now we'll go on to agenda item number 14, consideration of adopting the fiscal year 2021 business plan. Steve, or yes, Steve.
Okay, we're trying to get off on a good start to the fiscal year, and as directors Kelly and Meggs mentioned during their committee briefings, the business plan committee did meet on June 30th, and we went over last year's business plan and row by row what work had been done and whether we completed the task or if there's still more work to do. And so we went through that process. That took some time, right, Director Kelly?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it did.
And
We were thorough.
that's good. And then we took some time to go over a draft business plan for this fiscal year, which is before you now, and had some discussion about some things that we propose to be added to. And I'll just remind the board that the 2016 strategic plan that you adopted is based on effective utility management attributes. It's something that AWWA, the American Water Works Association, and others pulled together to assist districts like us in water, wastewater, stormwater, et cetera, just for some fundamental categories for effective utility management. And it's useful, I think, in also brainstorming new business plan objectives, thinking to ourselves, okay, as I go through this on page 677 or page 1 of the business plan, the stakeholder understanding and support and what that means and what type of activities we're doing to promote stakeholder understanding and support. And then the next attribute on page 679 is customer service. And, you know, one of those things might be updating the Lateral grant program resolution to reflect the updated permit process. You know, that's a customer service task that we want to track and give ourselves credit for as a district. You know, another attribute is employee and leadership development. Another attribute is enterprise resiliency. And another attribute is financial viability and sustainability. Another one is infrastructure strategy and performance. And operational optimization. And finally, water resources and community sustainability. And in that final category, we think about things like maximizing recycled water. And we think about removing old abandoned sewers from creek beds to get rid of fish barriers, you know, just to wrap things up there. But there's a lot to each of these attributes, and that's why it took 3 hours or 2 hours, you know, to talk through all of the things we're doing to implement those visions. Some are more core work, like, you know, meeting, you know, setting and meeting targets in our metrics. You know, that's going to go on and on, whether or not we have a strategic plan or a business plan. But, you know, finding the home for that in this is good. But this business plan is advantageous for us to track things that might be outside of the normal core sewer agency work, such as how do we deal with Larkspur Landing property? You know, how do we deal with moving our agency under one roof over at 1111 Anderson? You know, these things that are not your typical sewer agency tasks. So I appreciate that, you know, that Greg Norby before me, you know, started this effort, because it's a way to kind of track our overall performance, you know, as staff and for the board and public to keep us accountable. And so I think that's why we took so much time, is to sort of walk through the table and talk about, you know, what's been accomplished, what still remains to be done, why we haven't done it, what's the timeline, who's responsible, and so forth. So, you know, and there's a home for a lot of our little special projects like the PSAs, you know, the public outreach, the coordinating with the different sanitary districts to do the commercials, that sort of thing. And so, you know, and the cost recovery program being part of stakeholder understanding. So anyway, we could go on and take 2 hours, right? But I did organize the staff report in a way I hope it was a little more clear and transparent as far as the process that we went through. You know, I did bullet the completed items from last year, the not yet completed items on page 2, and new objectives proposed to be added. And so we could focus on those elements, but you can certainly ask questions about any part of the proposed business plan. I'm happy to engage on that. And we have Julia and Felicia, and even Phil, he's still in the building. You know, we can talk about things we're working on if you have specific questions.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
What does the date mean? Is it the start date, or it just says date? I don't know what that means. Finish date?
Completion date, yeah. And then, you know, business plan committee commented on an earlier iteration that they wanted to know who was responsible and when things would be completed.
I'd like to add completion date.
Yeah, it's target completion date or actual completion date.
Yeah, something like that. Target completion date, I guess, is what we're
Well,
planning.
target and actual, is that what you're saying, Tom? Target and then actual?
Well, no, there's a date there, and I don't know what it is. Is it?
Oh, okay, you want to change that name?
Yeah.
Okay.
Completion date or planned completion.
I think targeted completion date is
Yeah.
some of these are, you know, like, for example, you have the ongoings, engage in discussion with Marin County about possible of providing sewer services to San Geronimo Valley. We don't have a target date for that. So, you know.
Ongoing is a good answer.
All right. Well, that's what it says.
Yeah, good.
I don't understand the status to date box. Because
That'll be ongoing if we look at it in 6 months.
Every single one of them are empty.
That's because we just wrote the business plan.
Yeah, this is the green flag, right? This is the go, right? And so status to date is, there is no status.
When we review this in 6 months, or
Right. And so what we do is we keep a file, and I showed you the file when we meet, you know, and it's up to business plan committee to meet more often if you direct us to meet. But we engaged you last month and gave you the latest, you know, updated file that, and each row had it was filled in.
It's a place for notes that will be put there as,
right. That's right.
as necessary.
And when it's completed, it can just say completed with the date in it.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, and it does.
Yep.
I think this looks great. PB is Phil Benedetti and BC is Ben.
It's on the back page. It's on the last page, Mary.
Oh, thank you.
So Patrick Filippetti, Phil Benedetti,
Oh,
Julie Cooper, Ben Connor, Phoenicia, and Steve.
that's what I really needed. I needed the key. There we go.
Okay. I'd move to adopt the fiscal year 2021 business plan.
Second.
21-22 business plan.
Julia?
Thank you. Orstein,
Yes.
Gaffney,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Hanks,
Yes.
Ella,
Yes,
unanimous vote. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 15, consideration of appointment of board officers, representatives, and committee members for the fiscal year 21-22. Julia, no. We don't have any really staff lead on this because it's ours. So we've nominated a slate before. Oh, Julia, do you have a comment?
I request patience. I know that this is always a pretty harrowing motion and seconding process, but we do have to do a roll call vote for every single one. So I will be furiously writing, but if I need clarification, please give me a little grace.
I have a question. If a motion is made to approve, if somebody makes a motion to approve the following officers, can't we have just one roll call vote on that?
We can. I think what Julia is referring to is that typically there's a nomination and then a second, and so then there's a vote. And in some ways, it might, in the past, it's been easier to just go one by one. In theory, we can do multiple ones in one vote. Maybe we go through for certain offices and have the nominee and then put it on hold. And once we get through a few offices, then we put them all up on a slate. That might be the way to do it, if we can keep track of it.
I was thinking especially of the appointments.
Okay, well, why don't we get through the offices first, and we'll do those one at a time. So is there a nominee for president?
I nominate Doug.
I hear 2 nominations for Doug, including
I'll second.
Okay, so Michael seconds, Tom nominates. Are there any other nominations for president? Okay, Julia, may we have a roll call vote on that nomination?
Yes, Orstein,
Yes.
Gaffney,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Biggs,
Yes.
Ella,
Yes.
unanimous vote. Thank you.
Great. Nominations for secretary. I
nominate Tom.
Second.
Thank you. Any other nominations for secretary? Julia, roll call vote, please.
Yes, Gorstein,
Yes.
Gaffney,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Banks,
Yes.
Zilla,
Yes,
unanimous vote. Thank you.
thank you. Nominations for treasurer.
I nominate Michael.
I second.
Any other nominations for treasurer? Julia, roll call vote, please.
Thank you. Gorstein,
Yes.
Gaffney,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Banks,
Yes.
Zilla,
Yes.
unanimous vote. Thank you.
Mhm. Nominations for alternate secretary.
Nominate Pam.
Second.
Any other nominations for alternate secretary? Julia, roll call vote, please.
Thank you. Gorstein,
Yes.
Gaffney,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Banks,
Yes.
Zilla,
Yes.
unanimous vote. Thank you.
Nominations for alternate treasurer.
I nominate Mary.
Second.
Any other nominations for alternate treasurer? Julia, roll call vote, please.
Thank you. Gorstein,
Yes.
Gaffney,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Banks,
Aye.
Zilla,
Yes. She didn't say unanimous, thank you.
Oh, sorry. I'd already flipped the page. I was ready to go.
Okay, I
Unanimous
just
vote.
can't,
Thank you.
I can't go on until you say unanimous, thank you. Okay, moving on to appointments. CMSA appointments.
I nominate Michael and Doug as our commissioners and the rest of us as alternates.
Michael and Doug, are you happy serving and interested in serving again? And-
I am enjoying it, and I would like to continue to serve if it's a pleasure of the board.
Same here.
Doing a
Sounds
good job.
fine. Doug, normally the president also serves on the finance committee. Just as a heads up, that's a lot of meetings, but you know.
It's if somebody wants to take that, I certainly don't want to stand in their way.
No, I'm not worried about, anyway, for my own part, I'm not worried about you standing in somebody's way. On the other hand, it's a lot of meetings, right? It would be 3 meetings every month, but just flagging that.
Just remembering when I was on town council, I think we had 12 a month. So it's,
I think we're being better represented at CMSA with continuity. I think, that's
I
helping.
agree, Tom. I also know that you're sitting in on the CMSA finance, so I
he's
would
not
say.
sitting in, he's on it. He's not
Right.
sitting in on them. He's
Right.
assigned to that.
Okay, so I agree that we're being well represented.
And I'm sorry, if I may, Mary, we just reappointed Tom to sit on the finance committee last week.
Oh, really?
Did you not know that?
No.
Oh, well, you're on for another year, like it or not. You're drafted.
So in terms of process, okay, so Tom has moved a slate for CMSA. Did I have a second on that?
Sure.
I'll second.
Okay.
Oh, you can, Doug.
So again, we're leaving the current slate, the current appointees for the next year. And I'm happy to hear that the seats travel with the organization, because I feel like that was not the case before, and we really, ended up not getting the representation we deserved there. Okay, Julia, Pam,
Roll
did you? No, okay. Roll call vote, please, Julia.
Thank you. Gorstein,
Yes.
Gaffney,
Yes.
Kelly? Director Kelly?
He seems to have frozen.
We've lost.
Okay, I'll come back to him. Director Meggs?
Yes.
Scylla?
Yes. Doug, are you with us?
Okay, I will count Director Kelly as absent for that vote.
Okay. Representative to CSRMA, that needs to be somebody who goes to CASA regularly, right? And
I nominate Michael. Do we
Okay.
need an alternate?
Doesn't hurt.
Has Michael ever failed to fulfill his duties?
Not to my knowledge.
Is there anyone else interested in representing us at CSRMA? Okay.
I'll do it as a backup alternate.
Okay.
Okay. So for Pam to be alternate, so may we vote on the,
Hey,
Doug,
excuse me.
yeah.
I think, I apologize. I want to let you know, I fell off the internet, so I'm on the
We know.
phone.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to get back on the internet, but in the meantime, I'm on the phone.
Okay. Well, we did vote on the CMSA commissioners and you were marked as absent, but we know you're there now.
Okay, thank you.
So now we're voting on CSRMA. Actually, could you folks mute yourself if you're not speaking because I'm getting feedback? Thank you, whoever, yeah.
I move we appoint Michael to the representative to CSRMA and Pamela as the alternate representative.
Okay, and do we want to fold in, do we want to reappoint Pam? Would you like to be the representative to North Bay Watershed again as well?
Sure.
Okay, so I propose we vote on these final three in appointments.
Okay.
Is everybody okay with that?
Yes.
Your motion, Tom?
Yeah. Okay. I move that we appoint Michael as the representative of CSRMA, Pamela as the alternate representative, and Pamela as the representative to NBWA board.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Michael.
Mike.
Julia, roll call vote, please.
Thank you. Borstein?
Yes.
Gaffney?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Thank you. Meggs?
Yes.
Scylla?
Yes,
Unanimous vote. Thank you.
thank you. And now we'll go down to the board committees. Standing finance, as I said before, it's typically the president and Tom, since he has such a great handle on these things. So I
Are
would
you okay
propose,
with that, Doug?
I'm sorry, I was on mute. Yes, I'm fine with that.
okay. So will somebody move Doug and Tom?
Why don't we go through all the committees?
Oh, okay, great.
HR committee, yeah.
HR committee, is that meeting at all these days?
It hasn't in a year.
But it's supposed to be meeting in a month or two, so it would be
Okay.
meeting.
So I'm always interested.
I just want to make,
I'll step off that.
Okay.
may I make a point of information, please?
Mm-hmm.
So the staff report we have, staff has proposed that the HR committee go from a standing quarterly committee to an ad hoc committee to more accurately reflect the meeting schedule. So a vote on that tonight would be for that as well.
Great. We will rebrand this as an ad hoc HR committee. That doesn't need anything else official, does it, Andrea?
Yes, it does. It means that they don't get compensation.
Oh, I said it doesn't need anything else. I think we decided compensation independently when we scheduled the meetings. Is that correct?
The other ad hoc committees do say board compensation, ad hoc education, ad hoc facilities, and ad hoc committee for the annual business plan all say yes under compensation.
Yeah, but the facilities committee does not receive compensation. So that should be a no.
Okay.
Well, you guys can decide that as part of your motion also, if you want it to be a yes.
Okay. So, so I'm interested in serving on the HR committee.
Okay,
Michael,
so
Yeah,
are
I'd
you
like,
interested in continuing, or is someone else interested in serving on the HR committee?
I'd like to do it. We haven't done it in a long time.
Okay.
Borstein and Scylla,
Okay. Ad hoc Education and Outreach Committee, Pam and Doug, are you still interested in that, or is anybody else interested in that at this point?
I'll do it. We only meet once a year, I believe. So it's, but we have, yeah, that's ad hoc. Yeah, let's stay on it. Yeah, we only meet once a year usually.
Doug, are you still interested in doing that?
Sure.
Okay, great. We'll leave that as is. Do we still need the Ad hoc Facilities Committee? And
you know, we might, and I'd like to do it.
I'll do it with Tom.
And we don't get any compensation. No.
Just the joy of knowing that we've done the right thing.
okay, and then on the next page, Ad hoc Committee for Annual Business Plan, which just had work. Kelly and Megs, are you both interested in doing that again?
Yeah, I'll do it again.
Yeah, that's fine with me. So we meet once a year, or, you know, I think we should review it maybe in 6 months in a full board meeting.
Sounds good. Okay, so the only changes from existing are that I'll join the HR committee and Doug will step off, and Doug will join the finance committee and I will step off. And that the ad hoc facilities committee is not going to get board compensation.
And the HR committee will now be ad hoc committee.
Ah, yes. All right, thank you Gina, for that addition. All right, do I have a motion for that?
I move that whole slate what Mary just said.
I second.
I'm back.
Roll call vote, please.
Hi, Doug.
Hi.
Are we ready for a roll call vote, President Silla?
Sure.
Yes.
Thank you. Borstein,
Yes.
Gaffney,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Meggs,
Yes.
Silla,
Yes.
unanimous vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item number 16, monthly operations and maintenance report. Steve, anything, or Bill, anything you want to highlight? 0 spills.
I have a question.
Yes.
I'm glad there's 0 spills, but how was there 8 staff hours on a private SSO if there were no spills?
Good question. We don't report private lateral spills. There's an exemption, you know, that we're not, but we respond, and we don't know if it's private or public until we respond and do an assessment. In these cases, these were clearly spills from private lateral systems caused by those owners of those systems. And that's more common when we get called out. But as part of our service, you know, we assume, you know, we're the best equipped organization to deal with rapid response because of our overflow emergency response plan, sewer system management plan. So we're the experts. We show up, we help out, and we guide people on the next steps when it's their responsibility. And once everything's kind of taken care of, we take off. You know, we help stabilize the situation. But
Okay.
if it comes from a private lateral, it's not our responsibility.
So I guess what you report here to us is based on what you need to report to the state, right? Is that what you mean when you say?
Yeah, somewhat, but also we're in the metrics report, we're letting you know that we spend time and district resources on responding to private lateral spills because, you know, it's expected. We're the public entity with the expertise and the capability. And so we play a role in managing the situation, but we hand it off and it doesn't become a reportable spill. In San Diego Regional Water Board, it is reportable. 1 out of the 9 regional water boards in the state actually requires the sewer agencies to report private lateral spills, but not here.
I was also going to say, I'm pleased to see we've got our RVSD flow to CMSA down at 42% this month. So that's really nice.
That's the lowest percentage of inflow since July 2018. And, you know, our records in these metrics reports go back to 17. So that's our record low, but we tied it.
I'd be interested in seeing a chart from 17 to today. That'd be interesting sometime.
Yeah, it's in the, we do it in the metric in the annual report.
Okay. With the annual, you go back several years in the annual?
Yes.
I don't remember that. Okay. All right. Great.
Yeah. So this is the lowest, but we're tied with the, you know, July 8th of 2018, 3 years ago.
I'd like to see that being the number in January and February, but you know, I dream.
We're working on it.
Okay.
Anything else? Our next meeting is on August 18th. Seeing nothing else, thank you all.
Thank you all.
Mary.
Bye, we're adjourned. Thanks.